And so when I was seeking clarity and I was trying to figure out what I wanted, understanding my why mattered. That impacted me a lot. When someone gets to a certain age, they almost forget about how to desire, what they want for themselves. When you take that action, you are going to be in the face of fear, but that action is going to invoke confidence. So confidence doesn't come when fear disappears. It comes when you actually take action.
Meet Lauren. She sits in the passenger seat looking out the window, observing the balloons bob in the rearview mirror, drifting with every turn of the car. The baby shower was beautiful. Her daughter was glowing. Lauren's husband, driving the car, is humming along to the radio. And Lauren is so excited to become a grandmother. And yet, a knot tightens in her chest. Because tomorrow is Monday. And Monday means back-to-back budget meetings. Another round of do more with less. Another week of pretending to be excited about a job that doesn't feel like hers anymore. Lauren spent over 20 years growing in tech, and now she's a VP, respected, earning a great salary, a secure role. And yet, everything feels hollow. Her youngest just graduated high school and left for college, so the house has become a bit quieter. Life is shifting. And a question has surfaced that hasn't come up in years. Is this really what I want my next chapter to look like? Lauren used to be so excited and energized by her work, but lately, with a new executive team that only cares about cutting costs and efficiency, it feels like her work is meaningless. She's become apathetic. She looks forward to Friday nights. It brings her relief. And Sunday afternoons are full of dread. She doesn't want to quit because if she did, she wouldn't know what she would do next. But what she knows for sure is that she wants to be excited about her work. She wants to feel like it's purposeful. She wants her work to make her feel alive. Today, I'm speaking with Colleen Pimentel, big tech executive turned coach and author, who helps high achievers go beyond success on paper and reinvent their next chapter with clarity and courage. And I look forward to hearing how Colleen would help someone like Lauren through this midlife fog and to rediscover purpose, possibility, and momentum. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Colleen, I was reading about you and you talk about how you've had 10 reinventions, and you also discuss your first act and moving into a second act. And I wanted to ask you first to tell us a little bit about your first act and that transition into the second act.
Yeah, Jay, thank you. Thank you for asking that question. I've spent the last 30 years in corporate. And in those 30 years, I've had 10 reinventions, going from being a finance person to being in sales. And there's a lot in between as well. And when I look at those 30 years, first I want to tell you is I appreciate and I am so grateful that of everything that corporate has given me. because I would not be here today with you. I would not have had the success that I had, the experience that I've had without it. So I'm very appreciative. But saying how I got where I am today, it actually happened 5 years ago. And it was an inflection point in my career, in my life. My daughter went to college. And when she left to go to college, something happened. I felt like I lost my identity. My identity as a mom. And I didn't. I mean, I'm always going to be a mom. But that started a 5 year journey for me. And that 5 year journey was more about what is my identity? What is it tied to? What am I doing? What is my purpose? And that is how I've gotten here today, which is, me actually living my purpose as opposed to just the shoulds that I've had over the first act.
Mm. With that instance of a identity crisis, your daughter going off to college, you said it led to you having to do some discovery. I'm curious as to what were some of the steps that you had to take. How did you go about gaining that clarity, rebuilding that sense of identity, and finding your purpose?
Yeah, so there were a lot of ebbs and flows in this whole process, but there were three main components that I would say. So
Hmm.
one, I had a fabulous therapist, Susan E. James. She was amazing, and she helped to guide me through this journey. The second is a lot of books that I read, tons and tons of books. In fact, my husband said that if I bought one more book, that we would need to go buy a bigger house. That's how many books that I actually was reading. But then third, just the whole working on myself. So I had these things, these my therapist and the books to actually guide me,
Hmm.
but working on myself and understanding what my desires were. That's really what guided me, and it's what in made me want to write my book, which is my second act book that we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's a blueprint of how I got from there to where I am today.
Mm. I'm curious, what was one of those books? What was one of the books that really impacted you?
Oh my gosh, there were so many books. And it's going to be all over the place because I went really, really deep into psychology,
Uh huh.
but I also went really, really deep into like business stuff, which actually tied into this. So Simon Sinek, when he talks about your why, he's talking
Yeah.
all about business. But you know what? You can tie that into your personal life. And so when I was seeking clarity and I was trying to figure out what I wanted, understanding my why mattered. That impacted
Mm.
me a lot. And so that would have been a very strategic book for me. Atomic Habits, really talking about consistency and compounding effects of doing unsexy daily habits over and over again. I could keep going on about all the books that were out there and the podcasts that were out there as well that helped me. But yeah, there's a lot of knowledge that's out to help people.
Those are two fantastic books, which I know I've shared on this podcast many times. And I think it's interesting that you brought those two up, and the order in which you brought them up, because what James Clear talks about are the habits we build in creating systems. But if we don't have the why, if we don't have the real meaning, the real purpose, then any activity feels meaningless. In other words, what you discovered, and I agree with, is it has to start from that deeper purpose, that deeper why, getting clear on that. Then you go inside out to figure out what are the appropriate activities to commit to.
100%. Because when you decide to make a change, you're going to face resistance, right? There's two types of resistance you're going to face. One is fear from yourself. Um, and Sometimes you need, just like you said, you need that why to help you. Because if you don't have, if you give you an example, I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight because to look better. If that is like frivolous, you know what I mean? You're never going to actually do it. You need the inherent why. If it's because I want to lose weight because I want to run this marathon or I want to be around for my grandchildren and be active, that is a real why. That will actually make you go further. The other piece of resistance that you'll get is from external resistance. It could even be people that are proponents for you, that like your family, your loved ones. But what will happen is all of a sudden, when you change their environment per se, and there's resistance from them. Unless you know your why, you are going to be pushed on the other side. So I think this is a key component of any change, any reinvention that you do, is understanding that very deeply.
I appreciate that you acknowledge that the why can't be frivolous. It can't be how I often refer to it is it can't be so self-absorbed in just something that I want for me and I get and it's just about me, me, me. It's as you said, I exercise so I can be there for my children. I can be able to better serve others. So I'm curious, Colleen, in your discovery, what did you come to as your deeper why?
I want to impact people, Jay. That's what my goal is, and that's why I love being on this show. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this show. But if I can impact just one person, just one, that actually is my goal. I've had a lot of success in corporate. What I want now is I want other people to be able to feel fulfilled, to live their purpose, to not have regrets. And so if I can touch someone, that is it. When I released my book, I got a number of reviews and people who said that it actually touched them, it resonated with them, and it helped them. To me, it's not about financial gain here. It's all about how can I help other people and how can I help them to do it faster than I did so they don't have to go through these ebbs and flows over the last 5 years that I did.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And for those listening who are hearing Colleen's story here, while you're saying financial is not the reason for it, it ends up becoming a byproduct, which is
Of
to
course.
suggest that once you add value in that way and it's impacting others, the byproduct is that you will also receive that kind of compensation for what you're giving to the world. So I would encourage anyone hearing that to not think, well, I need to be able to earn money for my family. That has to be about no, no, don't worry. The money will come. It is something that will be a natural byproduct of being able to serve others and impact others. Now, you brought up the word desires. I was interested in learning more about unpacking that with you. You said you were working on yourself and you figured out your desires. Now, one of them is helping people. I guess how did you go through that exercise and what helped you to figure out what the appropriate next step is for your second act?
Yeah, so I have an exercise that I actually outline in my book. It's called the desire inventory. So before I go through and explain what a desire inventory is, which is really simple, but what I want to do is I want to explain why you need to do this. So women, especially, but men as well, we always are focused on shoulds. I should do this. I should do this. When I ask someone, what is it that they want? What they tell me is like, well, me and my husband, we want to live here. I want to do this for my kid. I want to do this. Everything is not about them. It's about all these other, folks or influences in their life. And so when someone gets to a certain age, they almost forget about how to desire, what they want for themselves. And so this exercise is so important because what it does is it allows you to not take into consideration anybody else, but just understand what it is that you want. So let me explain what it is. You take 20 minutes, you get pen to paper, and what you're going to do is you are going to list down everything that you desire, but there's a requirement. The requirement is you can't take into effect your partner, your children, your family, your boss, um, and you're going to write down every single thing that you want. And it's going to be the craziest stuff that you might come up with that you would never do, right? But it's okay because it allows you to dream again. And the first couple that you write down in this 20 minutes, it's going to take a little bit of time, but then it starts flowing. I did the exercise myself. I had 5 pages. I can't believe I had 5 pages. Most of them I crossed out after because they didn't make a lot of sense, but being able to write everything down and to dream again, to find out what your desires are, that is key. And that's actually key with gaining clarity in your life to figure out what you want to do. You have to have permission, give yourself permission to dream again.
I love this exercise. I once learned something similar from a mentor, and I share it with some of my coaching clients, depending on where they are. I call it well, it was shared with me. So it's called the 101 list. And so what it asks you to do is to write out 101 things that you want. And so it's a list, like there's literally 101 on it. And what I would find, Colleen, and maybe as you work with people, you get the same response, they struggle to get very far. Like what would happen is I'd have someone say to me, Jay, I can only think of like 25 things. And I would always challenge them. I'd say, I hear you. And this is evidence that suggests that you have to get back into work and find more things because you clearly have to exercise that muscle. It hasn't been used in a long time, meaning you forgot how to desire the way you said. So I would encourage them to go back to the exercise, keep adding into that list, even if it's hard, even if it requires you to really give some thought to this, because in the end, why are we placing these limits on ourselves? This type of exercise, and I love it that you do this, is asking people to break through those perceived limits.
Yeah, totally. And I think, like, even myself, when someone I did this exercise with my therapist, and I would be able to tell her what my boss wanted of me. I'd be able to tell her what my husband wanted of me, what my kid wanted of me, but I had no idea. And you're absolutely right, it's a muscle. It's
Yeah.
it's like strength training or exercising. You just have to exercise it. But once you do it and you understand what you want, it ties into your why. And I think at that point, you are headed definitely in the right direction to make change that will actually happen.
Yeah. Now you brought up resistance, and that's something that so many people struggle with, which is okay, if I take that first step, I am clearer on my why. I have an idea of what I really want, but that inner resistance comes up. The fears come up. How do you, Colleen, work through the fear, and how do you advise others to do so?
So, first off, everyone is fearful. Everyone has imposter syndrome. When I started this journey, I was able to get into a workshop with entrepreneurs that was led by Heather Monahan and Michelle Bardin. And it was really insightful because what I realized is these people that I put on a pedestal, they had imposter syndrome. They faced the same fear as me. It's like getting in that environment with these people, it opened my eyes to wait, what I'm experiencing is the exact same thing that these people who I think are on this pedestal have experienced. So the first thing I would tell you is fear isn't going away. It's not. It's courage that you need. You need to embrace fear, and take action. It's just one simple action. And knowing your why really helps you. So, what I really encourage people is once you understand what you want to do, look at someone who's done it, or someone that you're looking at, and try to take an action. This could be a simple action to resemble that activity. When you take that action, you are going to be in the face of fear, but that action is going to invoke confidence. So confidence doesn't come when fear disappears, it comes when you actually take action. And I can give you an example of myself. So one thing that I did was I started branding myself on LinkedIn, and I created a LinkedIn post just like was suggested to me, and I had a coach that helped me. But in that process, do you know, Jay, do you know how long it took me to actually hit post? It was literally months. And this is so embarrassing, but it was literally months until I could get over that hump to actually hit it, because I was like, what are people going to think? Oh, so I think it's action that creates this. It's getting into an environment of people that are dealing with the same thing as you and can lift you up. And I think it's just figuring out what you can do every day to make this happen.
Yeah, there's so much there that we can explore a bit further. I love the idea of having someone who you are putting up on that pedestal to utilize, or as you said, resemble in how they're acting, but also to help you realize that they themselves are going through what you're going through, or maybe they have gone through what you're going through. There's one of my favorite books is Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox Cabane, and it's more about communication and charisma. But she talks about how imposter syndrome, the research really shows, can be worked through really well when you can uh, recognize you're not alone in your imposter syndrome. That there are others out there, even the people you really look up to, who experience it. Now, you had that visceral experience, Colleen, of Heather Monahan and other people that you look up to. They're up on that stage and they're telling you that they experience it. So you feel that connection. And I guess, my encouragement to people would be, why not even reach out to somebody and have that conversation with that person that you really look up to and hear it directly from them? Because most people wouldn't try to pretend that they never have it. I think most people will acknowledge, you know what, I feel it too. And I know it's helped me throughout my life. In other words, you're never alone in feeling this, is I think the message there that you were pointing to.
Yeah, you're never alone. And I make it a point right now in sending out messages, and building content to help people who are facing this as well, knowing that they are not alone, trying to build a community, a social community that, you know, that brings people up, that helps them to know that it's just an action, one step that's going to make a difference. Because like I said, Melanie Bourdin and Heather really helped me in that workshop, and now I'm pushing it forward and helping others. And what is really fulfilling is people coming and saying thank you when you don't even know that you've touched them, right? Them saying thank you for helping me, thank you for putting this message out, because that's exactly how I'm feeling.
Yeah. And the actions that you take, you said that's what really evokes confidence. What I find is that the more of those actions that you take, you end up building up the muscle. It ends up not being as fearful over time. I agree with you. The fear never goes away. But in your experience, do you feel that with consistent action, the fear loses its grip on you?
Totally. I mean, I think you just went into James Clear's Atomic Habit book, and the philosophy that he has. But even before I read that book, I am a big believer in that. For all of the reinventions that I did in corporate, it was all based upon unsexy daily habits that no one saw, And then all of a sudden, it was like bang. People realize it, and then they don't realize how you did what you did. But it's based upon those habits that you put in place. And yes, it is fearful at you are fearful at the beginning, but it gets broken. And psychologically, there's actually a rationale behind this as well. The way that your brain, when it starts, when you have daily habits, it becomes second nature. You don't even think about it, and when you don't think about it, the fear actually dissolves.
Yeah. And I also think what happens too is you familiarize yourself so much with the action that it no longer feels like it's something so different or so abnormal. The average human, what do? We seek normal, safe things we know. And so something different, unknown, that seems scary. But it's really just like you said, it's very logical. If you start to do something over and over again, it normalizes. And when something normalizes, it's no longer as fear inducing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's the psychology of this as well. Um, but fear is basically your brain detecting that there's a threat. And what happens is when your brain detects that there's a threat, it initiates the sympathetic nervous system. And all that means is cortisol is actually rushed to your brain. And so you get into a state of uh, flight, fright, or freeze, right? And interesting, I'm kind of going in a different direction here, but the antidote to that is gratitude. So when you actually get into a state of gratitude, your parasympathetic nervous system is invoked. And what happens is you get into a state of safety and calm. And the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system cannot exist together. It's a toggle. And so it's kind of a life hack that I like to share with people. If you initiate gratitude, it actually reduces fear. It's biologically, scientifically proven.
So what is the way in which one can initiate gratitude? You're feeling it in the moment. And let's say, Lauren's story, right? She's feeling it throughout the day. She's feeling it on a Sunday, dreading her Monday. How do you bring in gratitude?
So I think that for myself and for Lauren, it's when you get into a state of, you're not feeling it, you're dreading. I actually think you have to go back, and I'm going to bring this back to the desire inventory that we talked about already. I
Hmm.
think that you need to understand what it is and give yourself permission to want again, to desire again. And once you've done that, I think you can start on a route to get you to where you want to go. But one thing that I would incorporate is daily gratitude because it grounds you. And it's okay. A lot of people are they feel that they don't have the ability to want again because they have been successful, but wanting again is okay. But with a daily gratitude, and I'm sorry if I'm a bit all over the place with this, with a daily gratitude, which I actually do, it allows you to appreciate the small things so that you're going into your day. And it's really important that you do it at the beginning of the day in the right state of mind. So you're bringing positivity into the day as opposed to just focusing on what needs to be done and all the fire drills that are out there.
Yeah. And what I think sometimes I hear from people is, it's hard for me to do that. Like they say, it's hard for me to feel gratitude when I'm so stressed out, where I feel like I'm so down. How would you help someone to redirect that? How would you help them to say, well, here's another way of looking at it?
I think you need to be in the right state. You need to calm your body in order to get
Mm,
into a state of gratitude. So you need time. And that's why I believe at the beginning of the day is the right time to fulfill this because we all get busy, right? Things pop up during the day and things that you want to do, you don't end up doing. But if you can wake up maybe half hour early and start your day with something for yourself, not for someone else, for yourself. You start this by maybe some deep breaths. There's a science to, how breathing, how meditating actually calms your nervous system. Once you're in that state, you can actually write down, it doesn't have to take long, just things that you're grateful for. And they don't have to be grandiose things. It could be, I am grateful for having this 30 minutes to myself this morning. I am grateful for the coffee that's here. I am grateful for the great food that I had yesterday. It doesn't have to be grandiose. That's the thing. If you can be grateful for the small things, then those big things even mean more. But the key here is to start your day this way. Because if you start your day the way that I used to start my day, which is I pick up my phone and I would be answering emails and responding, you're not in a sense of safety and calm. You start your day hectic, right? And in chaos. And then that's how your day ends up, chaos.
Yeah. The advice on calming your body, I think, is excellent. What I think when people are struggling with this, Colleen, and they're saying, I can't tap into gratitude, I can't practice it, it's because they're in that state, as you were describing, where their nervous system is overactive and cortisol is flowing through the body. And of course, how can you be grateful when you don't feel safe? How can you be grateful when you feel so threatened? And so I think you gave the right first step, which is learn how to calm the body first before you try to force gratitude, because forced gratitude could actually be counterproductive because your subconscious may be yelling at you, that's not true. Everything's terrible. Well, let's calm it down first. And
Yeah.
then I love the advice you gave, which is then start small, which is, well, can you be grateful for the cup of coffee that you have in front of you? Can you be grateful for the 20, 30 minutes that you have before you start your day? And then from there, it could build into tapping into a greater sense of gratitude for larger things.
Yeah, definitely. I can't say enough about how this has actually transformed my life. Um, it has the morning ritual that I have, and I will be honest. Some days I'm not feeling it, and I try to do it anyway. But every day is not going to be perfect, and I guess that's something else that I would add in here, which is your goal is not to be perfect. Your goal is to show up and to be the best person that you can for yourself. But when I do incorporate this, what I end up seeing is I end up lighting people up during the day because that of the gratitude that I've started with. The other thing that I would encourage people to do, and it's really helped me, is when I'm at work or when I meet people, I'm like fully present with them, and I try to really see how they are. And when people feel seen and heard, their face lights up, and that actually gives me fulfillment, and that's part of my kind of my gratitude as well.
Yeah, I love that. The connection with someone, a genuine connection. Now, with someone like Lauren and her story, she's someone who has this great title, has this
Yeah.
great career, and it seems like she's lost something. Like she feels like, she's going through the motions. How would you describe what's happening to her? I mean, and maybe it's happened to you or you've seen it happening to others where they hit, maybe it's a season of their life where they go through something like this. What's going on?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to um, a lot of times we are doing, but we're not being. So you are fulfilling a role that you have, but you're not living your purpose. You're not being there. Um, and so for Lauren, the first thing that I would say to her is, you're not broken. This is actually your body giving you a signal. This isn't a crisis. This is a compass. It is actually telling you that there's something else that's out there. So I would start with that, because I think that people feel when they get to this point, it's like, oh my God, who am I if I'm not the VP of marketing or whatever else? It's like it's okay. You're at a stage where maybe you're grateful for what you have, like me, but you've outgrown that and you're looking for something else. The second thing that I would say to Lauren is, you know, you don't have to give it all up. You don't have to burn it to the ground right now. You can still be that person, but you need to take time out for determining your purpose and where you're going. These two paths can live in parallel. That's what I'm doing. These two paths are living in parallel right now. So it doesn't have to be all scary. It's not all or nothing. You can do it together. And I think that's a message that most people, like, it's like people just don't realize it. They're like, oh, I could either do this or I could do that. But you can actually do both. And I think that when you figure that out, I think you have to do, I call it a calendar audit. You know who you want to be, you know what your purpose is. I think you have to go through your calendar and figure out what actually aligns to that purpose. There's certain things that you're going to have to do if you're keeping the other career, um, but you're going to have to take things out and add things to your calendar that gets you to where you want to be. Final thing before I kind of hand this back to you is when you actually do live your purpose, even if it's in parallel, I think a lot of the one challenge that people say is, I don't have enough time. I'm telling you, when you live your purpose and you do things, you get more energy back. And that energy allows you to even be better at that role that you have. So I would say that, intuitively it doesn't make sense, but like that energy that you get from living your purpose actually goes back to your main role as well.
Yeah. I completely agree with the idea that we fall into binary thinking. It's either this or that. It's the common thing that we do. Either I am working this 9 to 5 or I am building out some sort of business. When in reality, that life does not need, who said it needs to be that way? Right? There's no rule that suggests you have to follow that kind of path. And the other thing that I'm curious to hear your thoughts about is that sense of identity. What I sense in Lauren, and I sense it in a lot of people who feel like they're in these stages, they've invested so much of their identity into just one thing. So it's this job, this career. Excuse me. What are your thoughts on how we invest our identity? In other words, do you recommend people to have a diverse sense of their identity, or is it to be a bit less attached to it? What's your approach or recommendation on identity in general?
That is such a great question. And I think this is core to everything because you're right. We're attached to our identities. I was attached to the mother identity, right? Lauren's attached to the VP identity. Um, I think we need to really go back and understand what fulfills us and to stop thinking of shoulds. And this is easy for me to say and harder to do, but I think in life we have all of these, we should do this, we should do that. But the reality is, what you really should be doing is being true to yourself. And the only way to be true to yourself is to understand what it is that you want and to live that. Now, the VP identity that Lauren has, again, I think you can take baby steps. And the baby steps are, you can still keep that identity, but start doing other stuff. And if you do that in parallel, what is going to happen is your identity is slowly, maybe it starts with like 80-20. It's going to go 70-30, 60-40. It'll eventually roll over. And it feels safer because you don't have to give that up, and it slowly moves to where your new identity is.
Yeah. And I mean, I could relate to it. I remember years ago where I really invested my identity solely in career and achieving success in career. And it was like I built this house that was on one pillar. And, if the pillar started to get a little shaky, it started to erode, the house would start to get shaky. It wasn't built on a very strong foundation. And what I had to learn was to diversify my identity and not let it be so invested in only one pillar. To be able to see that I am much more than just this career. And I think that, Colleen, that may have been what you encountered when your daughter went off to college, which was that pillar started to shake, and therefore your house started to shake as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that we see this with people who are athletes and then they're no longer athletes. We see this at midlife for women who have children that leave the nest when they become empty nesters. We see this when people leave jobs. And I will say, 50 years ago, you got a job, you stayed in it for 30 years and you were set for life, right? But that life no longer exists now. And I think the best thing that people can do, young, old, you need to invest in yourself. You need to invest in your skills. And you need to have more than just that title that tells you who you are.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And then the other thing I love that you said earlier was around the calendar. I often tell people, show me how you spend your time and I'll tell you what's important to you. So what you're putting on your calendar, right? That's what you're saying is important and meaningful. So when you are spending all this time doing things that aren't meaningful, that don't provide fulfillment, it's not surprising that you're feeling unfulfilled. So you said for someone like Lauren, it's like, okay, you have that time for all the work that you need to do. So you would suggest for her to proactively put time on the calendar for her introspective work, for her to work on herself.
But more than that, I think if she audits her calendar, what she will find is there's stuff that she needs to take off. Why are you doing A, B, and C? Why are you doing baking for these people? How does that align to your goal? Or why are you doing this thing at work? There are certain things that she can remove. By taking that off, it allows you to put things on that actually feed you. And so I love the audit, but just telling people you need to add all these things to your calendar, like, oh, I'm
Yeah,
overwhelmed. I'm already
good
working
point.
like 60 hours a day. It's like, no, you need to figure out what you can take off. I did this. I took
Yeah.
things off my calendar and either they still needed to be done, but maybe I didn't need to do them. And in fact, some things that I took off my calendar, I empowered other people to do, and they were grateful. They wanted to do it, and plus, it gave me my time back to do my thing. So I think the audit is really important. Adding, yes, but more importantly, taking off these shoulds that we've had for decades that are on there, like really understanding why we're doing it and does it align with what we want to do.
Yeah. You're right. Start with what can you eliminate? What can you simplify? So often we think we need to do everything when we definitely do not. And by reducing all of those time commitments, it could free up Lauren to come up with, all right, what's the right next step? Because here's what often happens, Colleen. Oftentimes people think that I need to do something totally different. I need to change
Mhm.
my job, my career, start a business, and so on. But a lot of times it was just that all that mental clutter and what they were going through was making it difficult for them to connect to what they really love about their work. And when they take away some of the things that are
Mm.
creating a lot of the distress, what they find is they actually really do love what they are doing and they don't need to make a change.
Yeah, that is true. And you know what? I should have started with that. Not everyone needs to go and make that change. For myself, I did. I mean, I want to do these two different things, but a lot of time that is exactly it, which is just going back to what it is even that got you into this role itself. But I think, going back to Lauren, The way that you described her, she's a high achiever, right?
Yeah.
She's gotten to the pinnacle of success. And I think there's another word that a lot of these people have, which is perfectionism. And I want to touch on this because, especially as you're trying to figure this out, you do not have to be perfect. You just need to try. And I'm saying this because I think one of the key components of getting to this point in life, is to have compassion for self. And I think a lot of people forget about this. They know about clarity, they know about courage, they know about consistency, but compassion, they forget. Being compassionate to yourself, treating yourself like you would treat a friend. When you try something for the first time that you haven't done before, you're not going to be perfect. You're not even going to be close to perfect. But every time that you try something, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone and you're growing. And that's huge. When you grow, like, just what that provides you. And it could be information that tells you you don't want to do it. That's fine too. But I will leave you with, like, compassion for self is so important. And you don't have to be perfect, you just need to try.
Yeah. I think, people do hear compassion for self. They just don't apply it. I think that's like, I hear people say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I know, I should be kind," but they just don't. I guess it's just so opposite of our default. Like, our default is to be hard on ourselves. Our default is to be critical of the things that we do, the mistakes that we make. So I really appreciate that you brought that up, because it's I gotta say, it's one of the hardest things I see in people to overcome. It's one of the most common things I see in high achievers, how hard they are on themselves. And I feel like a lot of work needs to be done for someone to shift into that mindset of self compassion. But I think it's available to everybody. And then the other part about perfectionism, it's so interesting you brought that up, because for someone like Lauren, how many years did it take for her to be as skilled as she is in her current job? And I'm sure
Yeah.
she would say it took her many, many years. Then what makes you think that you're going to get it perfect the moment you try to do something new? Right? Like,
Yeah.
that version of you 20 years ago didn't have all the information you have now. And that version of you took the steps with the information you had. So it's exactly the same now, having that healthy expectation that you're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect is a really important mindset for anyone looking to do something different or walk into that second act as you describe. So speaking of that, I want you to imagine, Colleen, that let's say Lauren read your book. She read Second Act. She was inspired
Yeah.
by what you wrote, and she reaches out to you and you have a conversation with her. She shares what she's going through, and you have an opportunity to ask her a few questions to help her to think through things a bit differently. I know there's a few things you already brought up, but what would you ask her and why?
So, not to repeat myself, but I would ask her about her desires, and doing the inventory. I think I explained what the exercise was prior, but I would ask her that. And then, as she goes through that desire inventory, I would ask her to categorize things, and I would ask her to figure out what is consistent, what is she seeing, and why is it that she wants to do this? Because it goes back to the why itself. I would also really dive into fear, because that's the hindrance. That's what everyone wants to take action, but they don't because they get fearful, right? And so I would like to pull back the onion, I guess, a little bit on, what is it that she's fearful, and why, and taking it layer by layer by layer to get to the core, and then helping her, not me answering this, but her answering, you know, what's the worst that could really happen if you were to do this, and is this fear real or imagined? um, I think that then I would ask her, what small steps could she take today to actually get her started? Small, consistent steps, not grandiose, where she wants to be in 5 years. And for a high achiever, that's hard, right? Because you're always like, I want to be here. But what small, tiny things that you could do, I would ask her that. And then I would ask her, you know, and it's more of not just a question, but it's almost a recommendation of her starting a journal, if that helps her, so that she can get the thoughts that she has every day. Because when these things are swimming in your head, if you can get them down on paper, you start recognizing patterns, and those patterns can help you to move forward. So those are the questions that I would try to help and guide her. Maybe not all at one time, but through a process to get her to the point of understanding what she wants to achieve and taking actions and steps to actually get there.
Yeah, and you also alluded to taking inventory of those fears too, which I think is an important part. I think that was a very well-rounded approach that anyone can take who's feeling that sense of I'm stuck, I'm not feeling as excited about what I'm doing, to go through those steps and to write them down. I agree with you. Writing them down helps you to be able to get to a solution faster. Colleen, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with me. And for those listening, to learn more about the great work Colleen is doing, the website is colleenpimental.com. I'll spell that COLLEENPIMENTAL.com. And of course, your book, The Second Act, is available as well. Anyone can look into that. We'll put that into the show notes. Colleen, thank you again. This was a wonderful chat. I'm so grateful to have you share your insights with our audience. Thank you so much.
So only one thing, Jay, before I say thank you back. So it's Colleen Pimentel with an E, not an A at the back. And here's my Pimentel, yeah. Here's my
Sorry about the
book,
misspelling.
and no worries at all. Jay, thank you. If I could like have touched one person with the podcast on here, that would be amazing. And I really appreciate you giving me exposure to your platform, to spread my message. Thank you, Jay.
What I loved about that conversation with Colleen was how practical it all was, how we can apply what she shared into our day to day in a very frictionless way. And I'll do my best to synthesize it down to what I believe are 3 insights and 3 actionable takeaways. The first insight is to get rid of shoulds and should nots. Because I think when we operate from that frame of should or should not, we're trying to be everything to everyone. So we're starting with the outside rather than starting with the inside. So be mindful of when that word is coming up in your inner dialogue, and begin to get curious as to what you're deeming important. Second insight was the desire inventory. Really taking inventory of what are the things that you want. What do you want? She said, start by not making it about others yet. Instead, what you truly want. So often we go through life without ever asking. So start by giving yourself permission to have those desires, and then take full inventory of them. Third insight, you're not alone when you feel like an imposter. You definitely aren't. I feel that way quite a bit. I'm sure Colleen does as well, and whomever you're looking up to and admire and you look to as your mentor or someone that you feel you want to aspire to be like, that person also has felt and at times still feels like an imposter. And I think knowing that helps. I think really coming to terms with our humanity, that it's shared, helps us to work through when that sense of being an imposter starts to grip us. Actionable takeaways, first of 3. First one, take action to build confidence. I think this was so valuable. We often think, I have to become confident before I take action. Colleen's advice was the opposite. Take action to become confident. The more action you take, the more confident you'll be. It doesn't mean you have to take huge actions that are going to be so scary. Start by taking small action and build up that muscle so that you can cultivate more confidence. Second, actionable takeaway, gratitude practice is the antidote. She said how fear can hold us back, and the antidote to fear is gratitude. When we're caught in that sympathetic nervous system really hijacking our minds and bodies, we can practice gratitude to become less triggered, to work through when the cortisol is flowing through the body, and it then taps into the sympathetic nervous system. I hope I said that right. And so the idea being gratitude gets us to be more grounded and helps us to get out of that fight, flight, or freeze state. And the third actionable takeaway is have compassion for self. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's not an easy thing. I get it. You're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I just made a mistake right now in how I pronounced the word. I'm not going to go back and edit it. It's just I'm kind to myself. I'm not going to be so hard on myself for making mistakes. And I would encourage you to do the same. Treat yourself like how you treat the people you love most. And that is a practice. It's something you have to be aware of. It's something you have to work on constantly. And on Friday, I think that's going to be a great topic for us to explore, because it is easier said than done. And I do get people telling me quite a bit how hard it is for them to be kind to themselves. So I'm going to share with you some of the research behind this, along with what I've learned in my studies on Eastern philosophy, because I think there's so much there that we can all find valuable. And I will guide you through a framework to help you to be less self-critical and more self-compassionate. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.